lawyer and politician, Vice Chairman of the United National Party of Sri Lanka. Joining me today in conversation on this Ideal Island channel is Mr. Navin Dissanayake. A very warm welcome, Navin, to this program.
Thank you so much, Rohan, for having me.
Great to have you on board. Let's see how the world of politics in Sri Lanka has evolved. You are the grandson of Andrew Dissanayake, the son of Gamini Dissanayake, an illustrious, powerful minister in the 1977 administration of J.R. Jayawardena. Your late father was the architect steering, or perhaps the captain steering the Mahaweli, the accelerated Mahaweli development program in the late 1970s and early 80s. What was it like growing up in a politically and socially intense family, Navin?
Well, Rohan, thank you for having me once again, and I'm very honored to be in this prestigious program of yours. Well, my political legacy is a third-generation politician from the Nuwara Eliya district. Well, my father, everybody knows about my father. He was assassinated in 1994 at a very young political age of 52 when he was a presidential candidate. My grandfather is lesser known, but he is pretty well known in the Kandy district and the Nuwara Eliya district. He was the 1956 W.R.D. Bandaranaike's government. He was a deputy minister in that SLP government. And I have myself also, after my father died, come a long way in politics from 1997 when I was appointed as organizer in the UNP. I've been a cabinet minister for nearly 10 years and also governor of the Gamini province, which itself is a cabinet rank. And now, well, the question that you asked, what was it like growing up in a political environment such as that? Very interesting and very dynamic, because I remember as a young child how J.R. Jayawardena mobilized the UNP to be a very strong, dynamic and very vision-oriented party, right of center political party, which opened up the economy in Sri Lanka, which brought a lot of market deregulation, privatization, and also, of course, safeguarded the social fabric through very meaningful welfare measures. So I think that's the right balance that J.R. Jayawardena struck, and we continued from 77 to 88. And then from 88, President Premadasa came, and I think he had a more of a tilt towards welfare programs, where he felt that there was a lot of social injustice through the market economy. So I grew up in that environment where the UNP was revived by J.R. Jayawardena and kept open as a very dynamic party, because the politics of Sri Lanka evolved from 1977 onwards. So I think my growing up has been a very interesting stages of growing up, because I've seen Sri Lanka from various angles from 1977 onwards, various stages of development, various stages of deterioration also, I would say. And of course, Sri Lanka is Sri Lanka, as you know. It's a very unique place to be in, very healthy, democratic, vibrant place, but also a lot of negatives, sort of like a lot of emotionalism in politics involved. So I think it's very interesting times, because now we have a third force in power. It was the left and the right normally, but now we have very astute third force in power. So I think the old political forces have to come to terms with this, and we have to grow to adapt to these changes. So I think it's very interesting times ahead of us.
That's a very interesting point you made, and I was going to ask you about how the established political parties, especially the UNP and the SLFP at that time, has gone down in popularity. what went wrong? I mean, in 1977, when your father was in government, I think the United National Party had a 2/3 majority or 5/6 majority in parliament.
5/6, yeah, 5/6.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there was a presidential system introduced, free economy, as you highlighted. Why did we go downhill over the years?
Well, it's a very interesting question, but a lot of social theory on that. Social theory says that there are cycles in various things, and so is political parties. So 76 years after the established political parties, we have third force. So it's interesting because now you have the recent elections which were held last week, and the first and second forces are new parties. Third and fourth are the older parties. The Porto has got 9% and the old UNP has got 5 to 6%. So if you look at it like that, the established political parties have dwindled, and then the new political parties have emerged. But it's also, I mean, the interpretations of those forces emerging and de-emerging, of course, will vary from person to person. My own personal take is that the right of centre has collapsed because of the division of the UNP. If the right of centre of the UNP policies are to come back again, then the two centres, that is the SJB and the UNP, have to obviously come together at a certain point, because the SJB has got a larger fraction of the traditional UNP vote, while the UNP also has a certain element, I would say about 5 to 7 lakhs of the older UNP vote. So the SJB can't win hands down without that old vote. Of course, the UNP is out of the picture without the majority of the UNP votes not coming to the UNP. So we are in a bit of a quagmire with the NPP also coming down, and only emergence seems to be the Pohuttua, that is old Mahinda Rajapaksa's party emerging, slightly getting a more popular, more like 9% of the vote. So I would say we had a very varying position in Sri Lankan politics, because the NPP has got a majority, but their majority has come down, and unless, of course, there's something very drastic happening and fluid, because Sri Lankan politics is very fluid all the time. So we are ahead for very interesting times, I would say.
Interesting and possibly turbulent times for the conventional parties, I guess.
Yes, that's right, Rohan.
So how do you see the mandate of the people expressed in the last presidential election, the parliamentary elections, and to a slightly diminishing vote base at the local elections for the National People's Power, and the way it's tractioning forward? What's your opinion?
Well, I don't stick to the party line, and I'm being very honest with you on this. I feel that Andrew Kumara got 43% in the presidential vote, and well, that was quite a surprise, because he emerged from 3% to 43%. And then of course I of course knew this. As soon as you have a parliamentary election, soon after the presidential, there's a huge shift towards the winning side, which we saw in 2019 as well. After 2019 Gota's victory, he also got 155 or whatever, 2/3 majority in parliament in the 2020 election. So I knew that I was not surprised with that 2/3 majority that NPP JP got. I was surprised with the collapse of the opposition vote. I thought normally they would have got about 50 odd seats, 50 to 60, but they went down to 35 seats. And then of course now we have the pendulum kind of realigning again to the middle, where the NPP JP has lost nearly 2 million votes, and they have come back to that 43% of Andrew Kumar in the presidential election. So I mean, they still have a vast majority with them. and the opposition parties have not been able to gather their forces and remobilize because they are divided. And I'm one person in the UNP who has been advocating that we should get together with the SJB, because our entire UNP block vote is there, and a small percentage was.
So I just want to interrupt you there, Navin, because that's a point I want to expand. I want you to expand on. Quite rightly, you say that the centrist parties, namely the UNP and the SJB, should come back together. Is that ground reality?
Surprisingly, a lot of people on the ground want that. A lot of people on the ground. I would say my old friends, because we've been together for so long. I mean, it's only in 2019 that we departed, that this break happened. So I think the ground wants it, but as the middle management and the top more resistant to it. But these things always it's always a dynamics. Once you break a plate, it's very difficult to put it back together again, because it's a lot of glue that needs to be done on the plate, and it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same plate as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So once the damage is done, it's very difficult to undo the damage. This is the point I like to make, because I don't like to blame people and scold people. That's not my style of politics. But I think President Premadasa made a historic mistake by not appointing my father Lalit as the PM, right? And then that just continued on. Then Mr. Wickramasinghe came in '94, and then he had like good 10-15 years with him too. And the party did come up a lot under him. But now I think with the division, and the division can be blamed both on Mr. Wickramasinghe and Mr. Premadasa. Okay, equal. Let's say equally for argument's sake, right? You're a lawyer and I'm a lawyer, so let's apportion the blame equally. I don't want to. I know a certain amount of facts which can apportion more on the other, but that's not going to help anybody.
That will not resolve the issues or the disputes and bring the two parties together. Do you see traction in the third party, which used to be the opponent, the SLFP stroke SLPP, the Pohottua, coming in, or some members coming in to form a broader center to the center right going forward?
Yeah, so that's also very interesting, Rohan, because the SLPP is the old SLFP, right?
Yeah.
So Sri Lanka Freedom Party is now the Sri Lanka Podujana Party, and the Rajapaksa family is dominating that SLPP. So a lot of people give me this hype that Namal has done exceptionally well. I don't buy into that, because what's happening is, what happened was a very small fraction of the vote that went from the SLPP to the NPP JVP came back again to the SLPP, right? So that's how I look at it. But of course, as things go on, and as people get more unhappier and more frustrated, the SLPP stands to win more votes from the NPP JVP than any other side. Now, on the other hand, Dilip Jayavira with the Sarvajana Balaya is also making a pitch for that vote. So therefore, there's going to be a competition for that right of for the left of center vote between Dilip, Namal, and also the NPP JVP. But whereas if the SJP and the UNP get together, that right of center vote can emerge very strongly. So I think the right of center vote can emerge more quickly than the left of center vote, because that is more divided than the right of center vote.
I can see your point. Yeah. So, you are a graduate from Sussex University, Attorney-at-Law, barrister from Middle Temple in the United Kingdom, former Minister of Tourism, Plantation Industries, and one-time Minister of investment promotion. So with a well-rounded education and experience in politics, that's very important, and in government, how do you see the development of Sri Lanka as a self-sustaining, non-dependent country, especially in South Asia and of course rest of the world, but let's look at South Asia. I mean, if you had your free will and the way forward, what's your vision for Sri Lanka?
Well, we are actually well positioned at the moment in Asia, because we can be transformed into a very wealthy hub, economic hub, because we have the two largest. I mean, I'm sure you did foresee this a decade ago, Rohan. I mean, how the rise of China and the rise of India. So basically now, in terms of PPP, power purchasing parity, India is now, China is the most powerful economy now. In terms of GDP, China is at 19 trillion and US is at 30 trillion. And very soon, I think maybe 5 years, 6 years, that's what the estimates are, China will overtake the US. And also, I mean, the way India is coming up, now it's a 4 trillion economy. It's based fifth. Again, in 4 to 5 years, it will be based third in the world. So we have two large economic power centers that we can tap into and grow. So we have to emerge out of this crisis and get our debt payments back, get our growth back, get our fundamentals right to move forward. But also there are a lot work needs to be done in terms of attitude. I think people's attitude in Sri Lanka in terms of productivity, in terms of actually working for a living, in working for a better Sri Lanka that is united with all the Sinhala, Tamil and Muslim friends, and also getting the fundamental blocks of basics right, like the education system, the tax system. We have very fertile soil in Sri Lanka, we can grow anything here. So getting the plantation sector, the agriculture sector going, and the private sector, which I think is the most dynamic sector in Sri Lanka, contributing towards 65-70% of GDP. So if we can get the private sector model into the government sector also, and get this private sector attitude to everybody in Sri Lanka, you work hard, you earn a decent living, you pay your taxes and become good citizens, then I think Sri Lanka can really prosper. So personally, I'm disappointed after the war in 2011. I thought we should have taken off, but we didn't. We've had so many issues in Sri Lanka, like corruption. Corruption has to be, I think, rooted out. And I'm very happy that, you know, I mean, you have to give credit to where the credit is due. The NPP seems to be taking a very hard line on corruption, and I hope corruption is, you know, to a large extent taken out through institutional reforms. So I'm very hopeful about Sri Lanka's future, Rohan. I think we are well placed in terms of tourism, in terms of foreign remittances. Our economic situation can improve if we can structure ourselves properly between the great Asian powers of China and India.
It's very positive to hear someone in the opposition looking at the country and where it's heading in on a positive basis, a favorable basis. For a moment, I would have a listener or a viewer might think you're a minister from the current government talking about the favorable aspects. So that's a positive.
No, it's like this, Rohan. I'm being a positivist. I don't want to be a negativist, right? And I'm also being a Sri Lankan. I'm not being a UMP politician here. I'm being a Sri Lankan. I think Sri Lanka can go forward, and if we get the infrastructure development also right with the road networks and all coming in, and we have tremendous friends. I mean, I was just to tell you just one little footnote. I was the president of the Japan Sri Lanka Parliamentary Association, and I know the tremendous amount of goodwill that the Japanese have towards Sri Lanka. You know, we can tap into that goodwill. So, but unfortunately, that kind of goodwill is not tapped into to get the better deal for Sri Lanka.
Absolutely. I mean, Japan has been historically an all-weather friend of Sri Lanka. I think you hit the nail on its head. We haven't really exploited that. The word exploiting is the wrong word, but maximize it to our advantage. I mean, it has come forward from time to time to help Sri Lanka. Now, looking at Japan, we are our immediate neighbor India, and of course China, the world powers after the United States as at today, but the economies are very strong. What's your thought process or your view on Sri Lanka-India relationship? Not necessarily from the DNA based or the cultural DNA, but from a trade and services standpoint, because for example the United Kingdom signed a trade and services agreement with India. Historically we have had a number of agreements, and recently the current government signed I think about 8 or 9 I'm told they're MOUs. I haven't seen them, I haven't read them in the public domain. How do you perceive the relationship going forward with India from a Sri Lankan perspective, not necessarily from a political angle?
Well, it's very interesting, Rohan, that question, because the recent fiasco with India and Pakistan has, kind of opened our eyes to the alignments of forces. So we see, broadly speaking, we see, there can be undercurrents in my statements, but and there can be nuances. But broadly speaking, China, Pakistan, and Russia, align together. But then Russia is also close to India. Given Mrs. Gandhi, given Mrs. Gandhi's role and Nehru's role, the Soviets and the Indians are also very close. So that's why Putin was very silent this time. He didn't mention a word. he was such a great diplomat, But the Western axis and India are aligned together. There is no question about that, right? The only dispute was when the Indians bought Russian oil, when the Russian sanctions are on. But then Jai Shankar said clearly, the interest of the Indian people are more important than the interest of the Western people, which is right.
Yeah.
So Sri Lanka is well placed because the Asian powers, our friendly Asian powers, mainly Japan, India, and China, are very much pro Sri Lanka, right? I mean, even at the height of the LTT problem, the Indians always stood with us after the court, which my father got involved in. Mr. Wickramasinghe had done tremendous work in building the relationship up with the Indians. And I would say that most of these deals that were signed by President Andrew Kumara, the fundamental work was done by President Wickramasinghe, and I know that personally he did that. So his vision is of a very close relationship with India, which all of us want. And the free trade agreement with India brings $2 billion flow. The value of that is $2 billion now. But there are problems with our goods going into the Indian market, because Indian regulators are very, very tight on that, and we have to work on those things. And we should also work out a free trade agreement with China, which I think is also on the cards. So it's not a question of if India is going to take the next leap. It's a $4.1 trillion economy now, right? It's placed 5th. It has surpassed the United Kingdom. It will surpass Germany in the near future. So we just have to piggyback on this growth. And it's not only India we can piggyback on, we can piggyback with China as well. So we are not opening up the opportunities, and we have to have the entrepreneurship in Sri Lanka, which we lack at the moment. The entrepreneurship has to come up, and there has to be cheap capital for our entrepreneurs to expand their exports into these two markets. So I think the potential, even I was the Minister of Plantation Industries, I saw value-added tea going into China and also to Japan. What we call the golden tips and the silver tips, So it's amazing opportunities Sri Lanka can have.
The entrepreneurship that the private sector has displayed over the last 50 to 60 years, why is it difficult to get that spirit, that drive into the government sector? I mean, we could have advisors from the private sector advising the state sector and adding value and working as a team. Why hasn't it really progressed to the benefit of Sri Lanka?
Well, Ron, this is one of the questions I myself think about all the time. You know, in my moments of introspection, I think, okay, two things I think about, just like you. Why do overseas Sri Lankans go overseas and do so well, like you? Right? and why do private sector, you know, why do individuals who go to the private sector have that work ethic? I mean, they work tremendously, and they get good salaries for it, right? So this is something which I think about. One thing I think is people prefer to go to the government sector because of the pension. Okay, the pension is something that is still kind of a golden kitty for people. You know, you retire after 60, and then you get more or less the same salary till you die, basically. That's number one. And number two, we haven't had state sector. I was the Minister of Public Sector Reforms during Mahinda Rajapaksa's time. It was a very small ministry, but I was a cabinet minister. So I was able to actually look into this a lot and read a lot of reports. So I think we don't have like penalty. You know, when you don't work, when you don't perform in the private sector, you either get fired or you don't get your bonus. So there are those things in the private sector. Your bonus, you know, you work hard, you perform, you get promoted. If you work hard, you're recognized more quickly. Talent is more recognized. You're trained consistently. You're trained. Now, when I was the Minister of Public Sector Reforms, I wanted the government to send at least 15 to 20 of our top public servants to business schools like INSEAD and Harvard, and even some British schools we recognize. But it could never be done because of the budgets. We didn't have the budgets for it. But we must keep training the public sector, key officials, because their thinking must evolve over the years, and that is something which I think that private sector attitude has to come in and replicate to the public sector as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about overseas Sri Lankans going up in the system or the ladder. I think if I can describe the secret there is that these countries have what is called meritocracy. It's not whether somebody is black, white or brown or even yellow. If he can do the job, doesn't matter what accent it is, he gets the job. And we are now seeing, especially in the United Kingdom, with the free trade agreement United Kingdom has with India, preference is given to IT graduates, etc., from Bengaluru and other places in India, because the people who can do that job gets the job done. Then there are many Sri Lankans overseas, not just in the United Kingdom, across the world in very prominent positions, and also in not so prominent but very important positions. And you ask them, you talk to them, how did you get here? They will say, well, I don't know, I just applied for the job and then I got the job. Of course, they have to perform, performance-related pay, bonuses and all of that. Possibly we have an example in Singapore, the usual cliche that we always talk about when we talk of Sri Lanka, how we can get out of our problem. That is Singapore. Singapore's even politicians are paid very well, let alone the civil servants. So maybe that's something that we could adopt and also adapt as we go forward. Now, I'm conscious of the time and your schedule. Now, in contrast with the current government, which is by ideology centre-left, if I can say that, yet pursuing a framework restructuring policy laid out by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. I mean, they're doing the job of what a right-wing political party would do under the circumstances. So where do you see the role for the centre-right political parties in the midst of what we have today?
Rohan, it's too early to say that. We have to see how the dust settles after this election. Coming back to the NPP JVP, I mean, although it's termed as a centre-left government, we haven't seen any kind of leftist policies being implemented. Because that IMF is kind of holding on to the economic policy of Sri Lanka. So even recently, as like last week, it was reported that there's going to be a tariff revision on electricity again of 35%, which I disagree with, because I don't think that IMF conditionality has to also accrue and also look at the basic interest of Sri Lankans. And this 35% tariff revision is going to hit hard the middle business sectors and the small small and middle business sectors. The costs are going to go up tremendously in manufacturing, and we might not be competitive actually once that happens. So that in the 70s and 80s, Rohan, there was a huge debate about IMF conditionality and how it affects social welfare. And now actually I was reading today a few articles on Argentina of what President Milei is doing. Basically a same reform agenda is here. He's seeing small results coming in terms of fiscal deficits being cut down, but tremendous social impact on the people, right? So I think the people expected the NPP JP government to be a buffer to negotiate more fiercely and more strongly with the IMF on the social impact, but they are not doing that. They are not doing that. So these hits are going to come during the next 6 months. I think the economic team of the NPP and the JVP, they have to be much more stronger on these negotiations with the IMF, because we are just going on with the IMF conditionality, whether it's good or bad for Sri Lanka. Okay, so we came, they helped us, thank you very much, now we have come up. Our people paid for this, Rohan, they paid with their income taxes, At the end of the day, the public servants, the private sector people, every time there was a 100,000 rupee salary check coming in, they paid 30% from their salaries for this. So there has to be a more rational, humanistic approach towards revision of these tax rates, and especially the electricity hike, because that can have a tremendous impact on the middle sector of Sri Lanka.
And the middle sector of Sri Lanka, both the individuals as well as the industries as well, so that will then have a further impact. Small businesses, yeah. Now, with the tariff rises and so on a straight-jacketed IMF program, I would sort of say it would be difficult for any government in power to balance the equation, the balance sheet, so to speak.
Well, ideally you would want to have all Sri Lankans, whether they are rich or poor, paying a certain amount of income taxes to the government for the services that the government is doing. And whatever said and done, whatever the criticisms, we do have a very good health sector in Sri Lanka. That is recognized by the WHO as a very good health sector, especially in the region. Whatever its weaknesses, we have, and you and I have benefited from the education sector in Sri Lanka. You and I have got good teachers till we were 18 years old. We've had good teachers, and you can't deny that. So somebody has to pay for this, right? At the end of the day, and normally there is a component coming in. The Sri Lankans generally, there are only 1 million taxpayers in the tax department. So out of a 22 million population, 17 million who are voting, very few pay income taxes. Now the interesting point is the so-called bottom. They are not in a situation to pay taxes. Now, if you look at what you call daily wages, daily wage people, daily laborers, daily wages who get a daily pay, and I think there's about 5 to 6 million of them in the economy, daily wages. So they can't pay taxes, right? They get about, I think, like basers and farmers who work during the day. They are getting about 2,000 to 3,000 rupees per day, and they're given the cash, and there's no tax coming in. So that is the inequality. That is the unjust tax system in Sri Lanka. Whereas the top end always pays, right? They have to pay because they are getting their salaries. It's on a pay slip, so you have to deduct it from the pay slip. But then that's why we have the VAT at 17%. It was 17, now it's 8%. That's why you have VAT, because the VAT covers that social inequity of a certain percentage not paying taxes. So theoretically, if you're going on that strict IMF model, again you practically can't bring in a net to tax the bottom end. So there has to be some other method, because in Sri Lanka, where there is a large percentage of people in poverty, and the latest figures say between 6 to 8 million in poverty, how do you tap that to pay taxes? You can't. So that's why the government needs to generate more revenue for the government.
Yeah, on the point of generating revenue for the government, now we have, I'm told, around approximately 6.3 billion US dollars in reserves. You take a few 100,000 upwards or downwards. 2028 is when we have to start repaying our international sovereign bond and various other debt obligations in full. And you also highlighted, and I am also coming from the same viewpoint, that the government will need to start new income streams, basically industries, services, and so on. As someone who is on the ground, talking as a Sri Lankan on the ground in Sri Lanka, have you seen new enterprises, whether they are the private sector or the government sector, being commenced in the last in the last year?
Yeah, well, I mean, $6 billion in the foreign reserves, Rohan, is not a big amount. I mean, what? Yeah, I mean, you being in studied international capital markets, I mean, what is $6 billion dollars? It's, I mean, I think a small size corporate in the US, mid-size corporate probably makes that each year, right? So, I mean, it's not a big amount. It's not even a buffer, I would say. We would need about at least 20 B now, Kitty, to have it's a safe buffer. As far as income streams are concerned, Rohan, I think the biggest failure, now this is where I feel very, very sad about. Since 1994, since the left of centre government of Chandrika Bandaranaike came in, now you were in Sri Lanka till when, Rohan?
I was in Sri Lanka around 1986, 87.
86, right. So if you remember in the 80s, we've had the FDIs coming in through the free trade zones, right? So, and actually in 1979, Deng Xiaoping sent a team to Sri Lanka to study our free trade zones, and then he replicated them in China. So from 1994, we haven't had one free trade zone developed in Sri Lanka. The last one that was done, we haven't had one. For 30 years, we haven't had one, right? So the last one was done by Prime Minister Wickramasinghe in 1994. That was in Koggala. Yeah. So after that, for 30 years, we haven't had any free trade zones coming in. So I think we need to have zones, whether it's free or not, I don't know. There's a debate on that, whether you should give these facilities to overseas people coming in and investing. My thing is, okay, if it's like over $50 million, have slabs, $50 million to $100 million, $100 million to $500 million, $500 million to 1B, you have various slabs, and give tax holidays also. Now that's what Vietnam did continuously. And that's why Vietnam is now one of the largest exporters to the US. Right? Trump is on about how even Vietnam is ripping off the US. But they came up through this concept of encouraging free trade zones. So now the world has changed, right? It's not really brick and mortar now. It's really on the Zoom that we're doing, and other technologies that have come in, the blockchains that have come in, the software. We completely missed out on software development from 1994, and that was done by India. Imagine if we had like 150,000 software developers coming up every year. We only have 15,000 coming every year. Right? So we completely missed out on that. So like that, when there are new technologies coming up, we have to adapt and change. But unfortunately, the governments of Sri Lanka don't understand the world that is moving very quickly. So now we have to think about crypto, about blockchains. We have to think about the new AI that is coming up and equip our students with this knowledge. So I think those are going to be the revenue streams in the future.
Revenue streams for the future going forward. I'm so pleased to hear this from a politician on the ground in Sri Lanka, because these are things that go through our minds overseas, and the next best thing after renewable energy would be the hydrogen power, which Japan has already perfected the combustion engine, and rather than
I think 3 weeks ago Japan unveiled a hydrogen engine, I think something like that, if I remember right.
Exactly. I mean, to oversimplify the hydrogen combustion engine, it actually uses water as the base fuel, and the hydrogen is taken off from it, and then the whole thing. So I think you mentioned it, that we are always catching up, even on India. But the question now is to identify these industries, the sectors, the services, and so on, and leapfrog, like how the frog jumps rather than walk or run. Interesting, fascinating conversation, Navin, with you today, primarily as a Sri Lankan, I would say first, and then obviously from your individual political stance as a politician in Sri Lanka. I wish you the very best, and Sri Lanka the very best in its journey. And hopefully join up with you again in the not too distant future.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Rohan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Aibon.